Here we are, back at the 1930s Ag Museum. Welcome back. I'm Mike McCabe. I'm here with Don McKinley, and we're talking about the 1930s Ag Museum, and specifically, behind me is a corn picker. Don, when was this corn picker manufactured?
This is a model number 10 John Deere corn picker, manufactured in 1936. It's got a number. It came out in 36. They had this picker, by the way. Remember, we're in a horsepower and tractor power switching period.
A transition period.
Transition period, and this Deere turned this particular picker out. It could be sold as a ground-driven unit, meaning you could pull it with horses, and there would be a drive wheel on the ground that would move everything. It could be pulled by a tractor, which this one is, with a power takeoff. It could have been sold to the farmer with a Ford motor in it, which would power everything, and you could still pull your horses along with it. So there were three possibilities the year this came out, depending upon what the farmer had or what he wanted. Interesting.
And so this device revolutionized the picking of corn.
Oh, did it?
So take us through that revolution.
All right. I'm going to take you back to 1850. You can go on back to 1600 if you want to. The only way to pick corn, and by the way, the corn was pretty important to people because it fed people. The only way to pick corn was to take it off of the stalk and take off the shuck so you could get at the bare ear. And then you'd shell the corn and you'd mash it or whatever you wanted to do with it, boil it, what have you. And that was true from 1600 up to 1850 and 60. 250-year period. The only way to harvest your corn was to shuck it by hand, get the shucks off. From 1850 until about 1910, starting in 1850, they came up with a hand device. And there were hundreds of these different kinds. In fact, there were something like 262 patents, people patenting different devices to put on the hand, or the thumb, or the wrist, and they had pegs and anything to help get those shucks off of that ear quickly so they could expose the ear. And very laborious process. 1850, they'd have shucking bees, corn husking bees, and the farmer would take the ears off of his stalks out in the field and bring them in, put them in a huge pile in his yard. Then he'd invite all his neighbors, relatives, anybody he could find to come in and shuck that pile out, take the husks off of the corn. And I'm sure there was a lot of food eaten at those husking bees. And I suspect there was a lot of drinking going on at the husking bees. But it was a social time. And the farmer got his corn shucked in this process. Well, on up to 1850, these first came in the 1850s. And then, where are we going? This thing, first corn picker that I'm aware of, mechanical corn picker, comes out in the late 1850s, or 1800s, I'm sorry, late in the 1800s. And it revolutionized. This picker, John Deere, came out, I think, in 1910 with a picker. This one's 36. I may have those dates. Doesn't matter. But immediately, after mechanical power came out, the corn husking by hand went by the wayside. I might want to give some figures to you. When I was a kid, high school, Dad got me out of school and I picked corn every fall until the corn crop was in. Anyway, that's a whole story in itself. But as a senior in high school, I got pretty good at shucking corn. I'd take a team in a wagon out to the field. They'd go down, and I would, each stalk and each ear, I'd throw that sucker ear in the bang it along the bang board in the wagon, take it in and scoop off my load and come back and get another load. Anyhow, I got pretty good at it, and by the time I was a senior, I could pick, on some days, 100 bushel a day. That was maximum. Most farmers, most adult farmers were picking, if they could get 80 to 90 bushel a day, they were very happy with it. This machine came out, and John Deere advertised it as capable of picking 42 bushel an hour. Remember, I'm 10. This can replace now 4 of me.
10 bushel an hour.
10 bushel an hour. This machine can, in 1 hour, pick 42 bushel, 4 times what I can pick. Neither mine or this machine were the corn shelled. We just simply got that. Shelling process was a whole nother process.
Shelling meaning removing it from the cob.
Removing the kernel.
So you got the cob off the corn off the plant, and the husk pulled off. This machine got it off and removed the husk and gave you a corn cob with corn still on the cob.
Correct.
Okay.
Now in 2008, John Deere comes up with a combine. It's a model 9860 combine, which will take 10 or 12 rows at a time down through the field, and it will pick and shell this corn to the tune of 4,200 bushel an hour.
4,200 bushel an hour.
So, Mike, in my lifetime, I've seen the major way, the only way to pick corn, and if you were good at 10 bushel an hour. This machine was just part of the evolution then. It's coming up with 42 bushel an hour.
4,200 bushel an hour.
No, this machine.
Oh, this machine. Okay, yeah, you're talking about this machine. I made the jump to the combine.
Yeah, now today you can pick 42. That's 12 rows. Deere's making a 16-row combine now, which will be more than that in an hour. That evolution then happened basically in the last 100 years.
Interesting. Now, let me ask you this question. I've heard the story of hand-picking corn with the horses, 2 horses pulling the wagon, and I'm told that there were commands for the horses, and you would give a command, and the horses would walk forward some distance, some pre-programmed distance in the horse, and then they would stop and wait for the command again.
That's correct early in the season. As you started your first field of corn, you would give commands. But by the 3rd or 4th or 5th day of doing this, those dang horses would move according to the sound you were making. As you snapped the ear, they'd hear that. And if you got too close to them, they'd move ahead automatically. You didn't have to say a word to them. Well-trained team. Not all teams were that well-trained. And if you want an exasperated farmer, put him out in his cornfield with an untrained team. He'll spend more time training his team to stay on row, to stop and start, than he will picking corn.
Interesting.
And he can get pretty frustrated.
How long does it take to train a team?
Oh, it all depends on them. It all depends on how well trained they were coming. Do they work as a team before they come to the field? If they don't work as a team, you don't bring them to the field because it's a mess then. So it all depends on the horse. Just like how long does it take to train a dog to do certain things, or how long does it take to train a kid?
All right.
It all depends.
And we didn't have to train this guy. You didn't have to train the tractor.
No.
It just did it. No training involved.
You got to grease it a little bit and, stroke it a little bit,
Talk nice to it.
talk nice to it, and it'll produce for you.
Great.
It'll produce. We restored this one completely and put some new bearings in it and what have you. This would go out and pick corn today.
So it's functional.
It is absolutely functional. But we got a problem in taking it out. The farmer today is planting his corn so thick that you would have to drive very slow for this thing to be able to swallow it. You got to go back to 1930s. The corn was probably in hills, 2 or 3 stalks in one hill, 42 inches long. Later, another hill of corn. And so you could move along pretty good. It would swallow it. It would do what it's designed to do. We plant our corn so much, and the corn is so bred up so much more today than back then. You'd have to go very slow for this.
So this couldn't swallow 200 bushel an acre?
No, it could not. It could not.
Okay.
No.
All right. Great. Well, Don, thank you for your time. And thank you for visiting the 1930s Ag Museum.